Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to have you here with us in
Oh,
London.
thank
Thanks
you.
for taking the time. Maybe you could just kick off with a brief intro to the documentary for people who don't know anything about it, what they're going to be seeing when they tune in.
So it's a 4-part series, and it's in part a retrospective looking at 40 years of Bon Jovi and this incredible story across time. But it's also the story of John right now in the last year or two and what he's been going through. It's about a rock star losing his voice and trying to recapture it. So in that sense, there's great stakes. This 40 years that John and the band built is sort of hanging in the balance, and you get a real intimate look at all of it across the 4 episodes.
Of course, your background is mostly working kind of more in like sports documentaries. Right. It's your first music one. So how did this collaboration come about, and what was it that excited you, I guess, about delving into this completely different sphere?
Well, John is a sports fan, so he had seen something I had done on the American football player Tom Brady, and John approached me and said, so, I saw it, I really liked it. Tom has 20 years of history and success on the football field. The band's about to turn 40, and we've never really told our story across that time. So what do you think? Didn't take much more than that, frankly. I, like many others, have been a fan of the band for a long time, had sung Living on a Prayer and Wanted in karaoke or in stadiums, etc., where it's always played. So and to be honest, it's not that different than sports. Athletes, rock stars, they're performers. It's about getting on that stage, literally, in John's case, and sort of being present and doing what he does best. And in this case, there's also physical injury, and that is obviously it's something I had done with Kobe Bryant and other athletes in the past, Conor McGregor. How do you come back from an injury? How do you physically, but also mentally, emotionally, even spiritually, come back to this thing you love? And so again, that was really familiar. In this case also, you have the music, you have like just all of this incredible rich archive that John and others had collected. So there was also just an amazing amount of material.
John Bon Jovi, I mean, I guess I already had, quite a strong perception of him as sort of one of the nicest guys in rock and roll. But it just really comes through in the film. So yeah. I wonder what your personal experience was like working with him, and particularly, the idea that he didn't want this to feel sort of like that cliched, road to fame, rock and roll story. He really did want to show all those difficult moments, whether that was in the past or in the present. Yeah. So was that really important to you both?
Yeah, it was really important to me. It was also really important to John. I mean, he's a really smart guy. So, this sort of started with this vision he had to document something in advance of the 40th anniversary that was coming. And he had and has big plans for the 40th, including a new album and all sorts of activities, and hopefully, not too distant future, a new tour, which I know is sort of still in the making. But he knew, and I told him, to do that and to sort of do it the right way, it has to feel honest. It has to be authentic. And so he said at the outset, well, I don't want this to be a vanity piece. This isn't going to be about me in the background pulling strings. You need to talk to everybody who's been a part of this thing, because he's the front man, but he exists because of, all the other people, not just the founding band members, but really the support team. So again, I said, okay, great. I need time. I need just time to really pull this together. But yeah, and then he was very accessible. There's not layers of managers or agents or whatever between me and him. So I had a great fact checker. I could always get in touch with him and sort of ask him questions. And then he sat down for as many interviews as we asked him to. He connected me to, some of the different band members, et cetera. So yeah, and, that's the other thing that I sort of observed. The guy works. There's no compromise. We're going to do it. We're going to do the best version of it. And he just shows up every day and grinds. So, that's probably maybe something I learned about him. I was familiar with the rock star, the guy on stage, not the guy who's obsessed with the process, all the work that it takes to get him up on that stage.
And in terms of the logistics of putting it together, and I don't know how much of a fan you were, like back in the day, if it was all very familiar. I mean, how much were you sort of discovering for the first time? And I guess going back through, all those cassettes he has, or, the moments when they're testing out lyrics, all the footage, and all these incredible interviews as well with the likes of Bruce Springsteen. I mean, must have been vast. How did you sort of approach all that?
Time. You need time. But I was familiar, with the music for sure. And, definitely had seen some of the performances, had seen the behind the music type of stuff, or when he had performed, I think many years ago with Richie, on a VH1 special. I had seen some of that stuff, a lot of the videos. But yeah, when you get the personal archive now, or the behind the scenes type of stuff, the family stuff, I mean, that's a different level now of intimacy and access. And then you're being able to sort of couple that with all these interviews and the storytelling. And that was super fun. It was also complicated because everybody's version of the truth is, a little bit different. It's 40 years of history, so it's a long time. It's all filtered through the lens of emotions, good and bad, sometimes ups and downs, etc. So now you have to pay homage to that and be authentic to everyone's truth, but also try to figure out, like, okay, what's the, quote, objective truth? It takes not just me, but an incredible creative team around me to sift through that, to make sense, to find all those needles in the haystack. You mentioned the Bruce Springsteen thing. John and Dave Bryan both told a story early on about doing a cover down in the Jersey Shore, and then Bruce jumping onto stage, their surprise. And John said to me, he said, oh, I think, by the way, somebody took some photos. There's some video out there. I've seen it. I don't know where it is. So now that's like a treasure hunt, that our team sort of tries to figure out, okay, we're going to find that needle in the haystack. And those are, fun challenges, big challenges, but, part of like what makes this pretty special.
And I think there's just also so many funny moments, and I kind of love that because it is so honest, sort of like not embarrassed, when they were like throwing nickels at them because they weren't sort of hard rock enough. And then on the flip side, these really intense moments of vulnerability and him feeling quite lost, in the present day. What for you were your sort of really standout highlights and perhaps some of the most difficult moments to film?
Well, I think that real-time thread, because it's uncertain. I mean, it's still, to some degree, uncertain. Where does this go? Where is John in terms of his recovery? And he's much farther along now than he's ever been. But I think, that's the thing that really humanizes. The rock star stuff is great. It's super fun. Like you said, I mean, there's great archive, the music. It's really this celebration. But it's the human stuff. I mean, that's sort of superhero stuff. But meanwhile, like, there's this human story of a guy just struggling really to get back to the thing that he loves most. And I think that's the thing that's relatable. It's also inspiring, all the work that he's willing to put into it. So I felt those were the really important parts, but also they require a vulnerability and intimacy. So, it's harder to get, but I think, we built a relationship over time and a trust. And John, like I said, is super smart. Also, he knows I could show it to him and see how this is working, and he saw it. And so, I think we just had a great time pulling it all together.
And in terms of the impact of the film, I mean, for me, it did feel like a massive nostalgia trip, even for a nostalgia for a time that I wasn't, living through, because it was a bit before I was in my youth. But it did feel so inspiring. And just the way he really puts that emphasis on it being a team effort, of the hard graft that went into it, and also not giving up. And I think, on the one hand, just kind of going down memory lane of the amazing music they made, but also that universal story of just really, giving your all to life.
Yeah, it's an archetypal story. And, like you started, asking about athletes. I mean, that part is very similar. That is the story of every great athlete is about, let me tell you about the times it didn't work. Let me tell you about all the people who said, this is never going to happen. But let me tell you also about just my relentlessness and my just outwilling everybody. And that's John's story. And that's the type of thing I can say, like, as a parent, you just show your kids. It's like every kid dreams of being a rock star or maybe a superstar athlete. Most of them are never going to accomplish that, but they can take the skills or the qualities like this, resilience, this being part of a team, accountability, work ethic, and that is going to help them in whatever they do. So those were the sort of component parts we were really trying to express and capture. That's John's gift, that work ethic is the thing that I think distinguishes him from so many other talented people.
Also made me want to go back in time and be at one of those rock concerts.
Oh, for sure. Well, hopefully there'll be more in the future.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing all that with me, and I really can't wait for everyone to dig into this incredible 4-part documentary.
You.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Nice meeting you.